Hello and welcome to Casual Learning. I'm your host, John Bannan. In today's video, I'm going to teach you one of my Irish grandmother's famous recipes, which I call Irish fried up stuff. Now, my Irish grandmother, her name was Mary Griffin, and Irish cuisine is what it is. And one of the things that they would do is they would take their leftovers and they would fry it up and turn it into a second meal. So that's the origin of Irish fried up stuff. And it basically has four ingredients. The ingredients are lamb, potatoes, onions, and peas. That's it. So my grandmother was not a tremendously great cook, but this is a very tasty recipe. And the ingredients I've decided to use in this recipe, they're all frozen items, which is much in keeping with my Irish grandmother's cuisine style. So this is a pretty simple recipe. You can use frozen vegetables, ground lamb, or you can use the real thing. Cut your own vegetables up, use better lamb. But it's basic ingredients, very simple dish. So the first thing you do is you heat up some oil and you start cooking your potatoes. So I'm just using hash brown potatoes, and we follow the directions for frying those potatoes up. These need to be fried at 350 degrees. So we're going to start frying these up. So you get a pan or you get a skillet, like I have over here, and then you add some oil. Can't be fried up stuff without a lot of oil. You set the temperature of this to 350 degrees, so it shouldn't take this oil a long time to heat up. But other ingredients that I have are hash brown potatoes, and these are like little cubes of potatoes. That's what works best, basically. Um, sliced cubes of potatoes. If you're going to make this with real potatoes that haven't been cooked, it's going to take a lot longer to cook a raw potato or fry a raw potato until it's soft. That's why I use this. Since these are really parboiled, they're ready to go. Another ingredient is bagged peas. You can use canned peas, fresh peas, it doesn't matter. I've got frozen bagged onions. Normally I would chop an onion up, but I just want to show you how you can do this with just frozen items. And then I have ground lamb. Ordinarily I would make this with leftover lamb from the previous night, cut it up into little pieces, but there's no reason you can't use ground lamb as well if you have that at your supermarket. So let's put some of these potatoes in there. You can hear it sizzling. You know that the oil is hot, and it takes potatoes, especially frozen potatoes, a little while to cook. I mean, the ingredients on this bag says 10 to 12 minutes. Cover with a lid and fry for 10 to 12 minutes. So it definitely takes a while. The lid would just be used to create steam. I'm not going to do that at this point because I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. And I would also add the onions because you're going to fry the onions too. you're not going to fry the peas. You're really only just going to heat the peas up. But the onions, you're going to fry. So I would put the onions in there, and why not the whole bag? You want them to fry up. I can smell those onions. You want the onions to be fried. You want them to be translucent, slightly brown. You don't want fresh, crisp onions in your fried up stuff. Mm. Now there's a lot of oil in this, and whenever you're frying potatoes, you do have to tend to use a lot of oil. Um, the potatoes soak up the oil to some extent, but it does need a lot of oil to avoid sticking. Um, and then when you fry the lamb, if you're frying ground lamb, there's going to be a lot of grease that this creates. If it's cut up pieces of already cooked lamb from the previous night's dinner, you're not going to get a lot of grease out of that. But when you're dealing with something like this, you're also going to get a lot of grease. So what I would do is I'd cook these things together, and at some point when it's done, you're going to have to drain most of that grease out of the dish because you're not going to want to eat it. So I'm gonna add this ground lamb, start cooking that up. And you just want to break it up, makes it easier to cook. Now you can use as much lamb as you want. Uh, Generally speaking, in this recipe, it calls for basically equal parts of everything, equal parts of potatoes and peas and lamb and onions. But you're really just eyeballing it, and there is no truly set recipe for this. It's just a combination of these four items fried up together. Um, it's not really meant to be a gourmet recipe. It's really just meant as a way to use up leftover lamb and turn it into a second meal or a second dinner. Some more lamb. I like lamb, so I'm going to use a lot. Now I use three um, 1 pound packages of lamb. Now that's probably more than I should use. I probably should have only used one or two, but what to do? So 1 pound or 2 pound lamb are plenty. I went a little overboard on this, but it allows you to see it better. So when you're frying stuff, you generally uh, mix it up every once in a while to get the cooked portion that's on the bottom um, away from the heat, so that the raw portion gets its chance near the main heat source in order for it to cook. Plus, you don't want it to stick. And this is a non-stick skillet, but every non-stick surface I've ever used does stick to some degree. And you might want to flip it over. Now this looks almost like a soup at this point, but you'll drain that excess fat and oil out before you eat it. Because the peas don't actually need to be fried. They only need to be heated up. You can wait to the end before you add that. Um, if they're frozen, like mine are, you're going to have to add them a little earlier to give them enough time to defrost and get warm. If they're from a can or they're room temperature, it won't take them nearly as long to heat up. Now, because this is a raw meat, you got to make sure it's well cooked before you eat it to kill any bacteria that might be in there. You'll see the potatoes are starting to get there's a little bit of brown I see, a little bit. And with potatoes, you always have to flip them over a lot because the brown portions are always stuck to the bottom. So you got to get them up, you got to flip the whole thing over. And cooking potatoes, like these hash brown potatoes, it's constantly flipping it over and flipping it over. The pieces come out, I just throw them back in, provided they didn't hit the floor. Lamb is a very greasy meat, very greasy. So you're definitely going to have to drain this before you eat it. You know, see all that liquid in there? That's a lot of grease and fat. Now you may notice I'm not combining these two together. And the reason for that is the potatoes really need to have their own surface to cook on. You mix them in with the meat too soon, the meat's going to take up a lot of that heating surface, and the potatoes won't cook nearly as well, nor to what they're supposed to. Now, if I wanted to, I could put a lid on this right now, and that would help the whole thing heat up faster and cook faster. Except for the fact that you can't see what's going on there, and that's visually boring. So I'm going to leave it off just so that you can see what's going on. Now, fried up stuff is really just it's a standalone meal. Um, you put a pile of it in a bowl, put some salt and pepper on it, and enjoy. It's a one dish meal, really. Of course, you can use um, ground lamb to make lamb burgers, a hamburger but made of lamb meat, and that's delicious. You can really see that lamb grease. See all that lamb grease there? It's practically a flood of lamb grease in there. Lamb has a lot of grease in it, and you don't want to eat all that grease. It'll give you heartburn. But it's good for frying and for flavor. And of course, you want to cook the lamb, ground lamb, until it's all brown. You don't see any red. Now, I know when you're cooking lamb and you're serving lamb, you definitely want it to be medium rare. But in this particular case, when you're talking about leftover lamb from the meal from the night before, if you cook it in the least bit, you're going to end up cooking all that red away, and you'll end up with basically a well done lamb. And that's part of this dish. It's unavoidable. So it's okay that your lamb is well done or overcooked, because again, this is a second day leftovers meal, and it's not. This is not gourmet. Seems like Irish dishes all have potatoes and lamb in them, right? So there's a big surprise. This is, I guess, somewhat similar to a shepherd's pie filling, but uh, not quite. Okay, this ground lamb is starting to be done. It looks like I don't see much red at all anymore, so that's good. So this lamb is pretty. This lamb is pretty well cooked. So we can move over the potatoes, give them more room to cook. Maybe mixing a little of that lamb juice with the potatoes for flavor. I'm gonna put the lid on, give it a little more heat. Potatoes are notoriously difficult to cook or fry. It takes a while, and they get very sticky. And if you have any experience making hash brown potatoes, you know this. Um, I'm gonna just let that heat up, and I'm gonna go get a strainer so that we can drain out the fat, and then put it back in the pan when it's done, and then add our peas, and then we'll heat it up, and then it'll be ready to go. So I'll be back in 2 minutes. In the meantime, you can watch this. Tell me if there's any problems. So what's been going on here? You see it's bubbling more. That means because I put the lid on, it intensified the heat. Now, there's really an awful lot of grease in here, and it's almost pulling. And that's really way too much grease for frying hash brown potatoes. Hash brown potatoes don't need nearly that amount of oil. And floating in oil is not the way you cook hash brown potatoes. The hash brown, the brown is caused by contact with the heated surface. You don't need a lot of oil for that. So this is sort of making almost a soup, and you definitely don't want that. So the lamb here is clearly done. So at this point, I'm going to drain out that fat and let the potatoes cook without all that soupy grease and oil in there. So to that, what I've done is, because I'm down with this table and I'm not in the kitchen setting, I just got this strainer and I got this big pot that I put the strainer in. So then I'm going to pour the lamb and the potatoes in the strainer to get rid of the oil, which will go into the pot. And then I'll put the lamb and the potatoes back in the skillet. So hopefully this all goes well and doesn't cause a major problem. Wish me luck. Well, that worked reasonably well. So then I'm just going to get rid of all that fat. Shake this a little bit. And then I'm going to stick this mixture right back in the skillet. Now you see all that grease and oil in there. Look at all that. Wow, there must be, at least a cup of lamb fat and oil in there. That's way too much. You trust me, you don't want to eat that. That's almost like a lamb soup, lamb potato soup. So, all right. So now we're back to the skillet. We got rid of almost all of that grease, and now I can mix this stuff together. And now the potatoes are getting softer. And we're frying them up with that ground lamb. Now with the potatoes, you're not making hash browns, okay? So the idea is not necessarily to make the hash browns that appear on the bag and add it to your lamb. What you're really after is cooked potato cubes. They don't have to be browned. If they're brown, that's great. They don't have to be that way. But they do have to be cooked. They have to be soft and cooked. So here we got very nice mixture here. And it's getting softer. The potatoes are getting softer. Potatoes are usually the last thing to cook because they're raw and it takes some time. If they're parboiled, you're better off, but they take a lot of time to cook or to soften. So at this point, I'm going to add my peas. And my peas are frozen, so I better add them because it's going to take a little while for these frozen peas to heat up. Now, you're not trying to fry the peas. So I didn't add these in all that oil and grease because you're not trying to fry the peas. Peas don't fry. All you're trying to do is heat them up so that you can eat them. But peas are the key ingredient to fried up stuff. Um, it's what makes fried up stuff. So the peas are absolutely critical to this dish. And you don't need any other vegetables besides peas, potatoes, and onions. And in fact, I would discourage you to experiment with this recipe or add anything different. Um, Fried up stuff is really just those three vegetables and lamb meat. So peas, onions, and potatoes, and that's it. You put anything else in there, and you'll ruin it, and it won't be fried up stuff. It'll be something else. I don't know what it is, but it won't be this. So don't put any carrots in here or peppers. Don't do it. This is, like in New Orleans style cooking, they have the Holy Trinity: onions, celery, uh, peppers. Well, this is the Irish Trinity of onions, potatoes, and peas. So it's the Trinity. You're not supposed to mess with the Trinity. It is what it is, and leave it that way. So I have another bag of peas I can put in here if you really like peas. I'm not sure I need it. It looks to me like, well, see, a lot of this is eyeballed. Um, Another bag of peas might be overkill, but then again, maybe not. I would say probably could use some more peas. And the reason I say that is because let's throw another bag of peas in here. Maybe that's too many peas at this point, but there's no set recipe, so it doesn't really matter. You want the peas to be really visible. Uh, the peas aren't there's supposed to be a lot of greens in this dish because it is an Irish dish after all, and green is the national color of Ireland. So you want to see a lot of green. It's not all green, but you want to see that green. And this recipe it can feed a lot of people. This is a second dinner from leftovers recipe. So you're talking this can feed a whole family. 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 Irishmen in it. Irish have notoriously large families, so it's no surprise that they come up with things like this. Yeah, I see that's more like it. I think 2 bags of peas was good. It's got a nice green color to it. You want to see those peas. All right, I just put a bunch of frozen peas in there, so I greatly reduced the temperature of the entire thing, which is going to stop it from cooking. So I really got to heat this sucker up. So I'm going to put the cover on, and you can watch that while I go have a drink. Drink if I see that. Right. You're going to have a drink, and you talk about an Irish dinner. People may jump to the wrong conclusion. So let's see what we got going here. Still not steaming hot, but you want to mix this again because potatoes have a tendency to stick to the bottom of even non-stick surfaces. You do want to mix this around every once in a while. Now, like a lot of Irish meals, they're incredibly bland. So it's very important to add a lot of seasoning in Irish fried up stuff. And the only seasoning you use is salt and pepper. That's it. Don't use anything else. You use something else, you will change it completely. It won't taste right, or at least the way I would recognize it. So stick to these two. However, you gotta use a lot of this. It's a bland dish without this. And you notice that I made a lot of it. So you need a lot of salt and pepper to cover that entire dish because there's a lot in there. And you need to take, especially the salt, you really need to taste that salt and pepper, or this dish just doesn't work at all. It tastes like bland peas and lamb, heated bland peas and lamb with some mushy potatoes. This is the key. Gotta have this in large quantities. Now, of course, never over salt anything because then you ruin it and you'll never eat it. So be careful. So you want to taste to make sure you get the right seasoning. But I'm warning you, you put in a lot of this. So keep putting this in, taste it, see what it tastes like till you get to that flavor or consistency you want. And you should have should be, you don't want to over salt something. You can tell whether something has been over salted or not because you got to spit it out of your mouth because you can't eat it. So you don't want to get to that point. But you want to be able to taste it. And you want to be able to taste that pepper too. It's not a hot dish. It's not, like a chili or spicy or something like that. But you got to be able to taste it. This is the main taste or flavor component in this dish. So you better get this right. So I'm back with my spoon so that I can taste this while I'm seasoning it to know whether I've got the seasoning correct. So let's see how we're doing in here. All right, there's a little bit more steam. I can smell those peas starting to cook. The potatoes are getting a little browner. Those are all good signs that we're on our way. Um, with fried up stuff, you don't have to continuously fry it. You fry it to the point where you like it. And then it's just a matter of keeping it warm. That's all it is. So this stuff is great if you don't finish it all, but put it in the fridge. And all you got to do is heat it up. You can microwave it or heat it up in a pan again. But once it's cooked, it's cooked. It just needs to be heated up in order to be eaten. So I'm going to start putting in some of my salt and pepper. So again, you want a lot of salt. This is kosher salt. You can use any salt, doesn't matter. I seriously doubt my Irish Catholic grandmother had kosher salt in her pantry, but I happen to have it. So get a good portion of salt. I put in, right there, I put in a tablespoon. And, with salt, you want to mix it up because you want to make sure you don't oversalt something. So mix it up, taste it, taste what happened to the salt. Does it need more salt? Uh, oh, I can taste a little bit of it. Getting there. The salt is pretty good. I like the level of salt. Um, maybe put in, I don't know, a little bit more, maybe a teaspoon more salt, but it's pretty good. So maybe, in this dish, maybe I used like 4 teaspoons of salt, or a tablespoon and 1 teaspoon, which is the same as 4 teaspoons. Tastes pretty good. The lamb is clearly cooked. The peas are actually pretty hot, despite the fact that they were frozen when I first put them in here. And the potatoes taste cooked too. So this is coming along quite well. So then we want to put our pepper in there, and I'm not going to measure it. I'm just going to grind it, keep putting it in there. You'll want a lot of pepper. Pepper is really important to this. I'm just using black pepper. I don't know what it tastes like with white pepper or green pepper or any other pepper. You can be my guest. Try it if you want. I don't think it really matters all that much. White pepper might be more in line with what the Irish generally have. So I put a lot of pepper on the top there. I coated it. I'm going to mix it in. And of course, you got to mix it well, because how do you know whether the pepper has been distributed properly throughout the meal if you haven't um, mixed it up properly? And whatever it is you're tasting won't be necessarily representative of what of the entire meal. So you got to mix it up when you put in the salt and pepper to get before you taste it to make sure you get the taste right. Now, see, it's starting to stick at the bottom, which is good because that means the potatoes are getting brown, which is okay. Again, potatoes don't have to be brown, but some browning on the potatoes is not a bad thing. So I'll give this a taste, see how the pepper went. Okay, so I do taste the pepper. It definitely needs more pepper. The potatoes are still a bit on the raw side, so they need some more work. The rest of it's pretty much good to go. So I'm going to put some more pepper in here. You can watch this. I'll be right back. I think I'll put the lid on it to heat it up. Okay, I have returned with some white pepper. Thought I'd put some more authentic Irish into this. Put some white pepper in there. Now you probably can't even see it because white pepper is this sort of brownish white, very fine ground pepper. They use that in Ireland everywhere. They don't even know what black pepper is. But white pepper has a very distinctive taste to it. Very different. I mean, it's still a hot pepper, but it has a different smell and flavor than black pepper. Very different. and it's very Irish. I'm sure it doesn't originate in Ireland, but it's what the Irish use. Now you notice I haven't changed the temperature of this yet, and that's because I want those potatoes to fry. And most times the fried potato is really stuck to the bottom, and you got to scrape it off in order to get it. So I'm still at 350 degrees. On your stove, you might cook this at like medium or medium high. I would cook it at high. So let's give it a taste. See how the pepper is. Pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. Taste the lamb, the peas, potatoes, the onions, some pepper. Um, Probably could use a little bit more pepper. Again, you want to put a lot of salt and pepper in this. You want to make sure you can taste it. If you don't put enough salt and pepper in it, this is a rather bland meal. So the salt and pepper makes it worth it. It's delicious with the salt and pepper. Without it, uh, you might as well feed it to your dog. But with it, it's delicious. Of course, my dog would be very happy to receive this, but he ain't getting it, so it tastes too good at this point. So I'll try it again. That's just right. Just right. Delicious. So, you get your fried up stuff, heat it up. The peas and the potatoes, they need to be soft. If the potatoes aren't soft, it's not done yet. It's got to continue to cook. And you can soften the potatoes up just by putting the lid back on the fryer, and that'll heat it up faster. Salt and pepper is very important. The peas, the mix of the peas with the lamb and the potato and that taste of lamb fat or oil and the salt and peppers. It's just different. It's addictive. It's a very addictive, delicious dish. But you got to stick to the simple ingredients: onion, lamb, potato, peas, salt, pepper. Couldn't be better. So this is done. It's been about 45 minutes, so it takes a while to make this. This is not a 20-minute meal, 5-minute meal. But this is well heated. This is ready to serve. Um, and whoever gets this is going to be lucky because it's delicious. So all you do in terms of serving it is just get yourself a bowl, dish of some sort, not a plate, but a bowl, and just put a scoop in there or two, um, and it's piping hot, and that's it. That's the dish. It's a very colorful looking dish. You see all that green in there? That green and that lamb and that potato and salt and pepper, a little bit of oil, and it's got some smell to it, some aroma. But it's the taste that's important in this dish, not so much the smell. And you serve it in a bowl and with a spoon. You can serve it with a fork, but I'd probably serve it with a spoon. Um, and enjoy. that takes me back to my Irish roots. You'll love this recipe, and you'll never regret making it. So, hope you learned something. Make yourself some Irish fried up stuff. Enjoy it. Lamb is a very delicious meat. The Irish know that. Many people don't really know what to do with lamb, and I'm giving you a recipe of what to do with it. So I hope you learned something, and take care. I'm going to enjoy this. My dog's not getting any.